Hello guys, we are here in Copernicus Science Center at UX Poland 2016. It's the seventh time UX Poland here happens in Warsaw. And I'm with Jason Ulaszek. Hello.
Hello.
Jason, this year we are talking about responsibility in design, and as far as I understand, it's very close to what you do and what's important in your work to you. Could you please tell me what that means to you and why you find this important?
Yeah, I think that designers have a real capacity to empathize with the folks that we are looking to solve a problem for, and I think with that carries our ability as the designers, as the design community, to see systemic responses to problems, to challenges. And I think when we work on behalf as an advocate for those we design for, it's really important that we consider the implications of our work, the outcome or the objectives of the work, and what we're actually trying to do in terms of solving the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, as designers, it's what we offer to the world, to our clients, basically to work with their problems, to increase their incomes, to smoothen out their process. But I think there's more to that than just business. How you gather quite significant group of people, of top-level professionals, in going beyond the profitable part and focusing on communities, on I would say problems that are not necessarily monetized, but are significant on the lives that you work with. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. So several years ago, we started a nonprofit organization called UX for Good. It's really founded on the belief that designers have more to offer. Initially, kind of my inner motto was, designers are bigger than a wireframe, right? We have more to offer than some sort of interaction design deliverable. And in fact, our larger mission with UX for Good is to really help set the edge of design, push design to past its boundaries, its current boundaries, to experiment. I'm kind of curious about the application of design thinking in a number of different settings. I've worked in both the corporate world and with nonprofit, and I think ultimately it comes down to looking at how design can be applied to help either reframe something, to generate a new perspective, to identify new models, new ways of approaching problem solving, or even coming up with the ideas that squarely solve the problems themselves. And I think that has to do with a lot of the types of ways we approach projects as designers, and those methodologies can be used on a wide array of different types of problems, whether that's a social good problem or whether that's an e-commerce problem. I think as designers, we really have to focus on, I think, finding our way individually first, and then kind of our team, and then our community, and our group, our pack, if you will, of identifying kind of what purpose and meaning and impact is to you individually. I think that's a big question I've been really thinking a lot upon and reflecting a lot about in the last couple of years. And I think a lot of designers are doing the same thing as well.
Yeah, we are meeting here to talk about responsibility at UX Poland because, when we started this conference, we always aimed high, but it was a smaller event, and the design industry knew each other. The experience that we were working on, everyone knew that this guy is working for that company and they recently launched something or they are thinking about something. So it was like a small community, and therefore we shared similar approach. We had kind of similar values, and now international companies are having their global standards about design. So there are internal departments created. Local companies also see that this is a strong trend, and they are expanding in this area. And we have several universities launching their own user experience design studies, including our sponsor, Social Sciences University, that has this studies in Warsaw, Katowice, and Wrocław. So we have more than 100 newly brewed designers graduating every year, and I think we more often ask ourselves. What's important, like what kind of structure we should stick to actually do good work, and not only increase KPIs, but lead people into good direction. Because I personally have this worry that something can be designed well according to all the guidelines and work properly, but not necessarily have good impact on community. I wonder if you came across such examples.
In terms of guidelines for communities?
Well, well-working product that not necessarily leads users the right way. They go through the design process smoothly, but end up in a different place they would probably desire, or for example, they claim something, they bite more than they are able to chew.
I don't know if anything specifically comes to mind as an example, but I guess I would say, I'm fascinated by what's happening with design. We are so addicted to things that are well designed. We're so addicted to our mobile phones. The apps that are on there, the constant checking of social media, the moment you go to bed and the moment you wake up, and this thing is always next to you. So I'm fascinated by this connection that we have with it. It's so well designed, that these types of experiences are so well designed, that are they actually maybe even addictive? And if they're addictive, maybe they have, they could have a positive connotation to that, obviously, but there's also a negative connotation to that. I think I think we haven't really seen a lot of that yet, and I think there's some studies out there, some research that's being formulated about that, but there is such an impact if you just sit back and watch and observe what's happening in our world.
Yeah, we designed
with this addiction, right?
New environment for ourselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're addicted to the next greatest thing. We're addicted to, did somebody like a post? We're addicted to, what did somebody else say, or whatever it might be. And so I guess I would say it's not necessarily a specific product or an example or an experience, but it's this, I'm curious about what the next 5 years will look like as it relates to addiction to these experiences that's kind of growing our desire, and what will that mean in terms of how you and I interact, or how you interact with your family or loved ones, or my two young boys, how do they interact when they're 4 and 2, and they're fighting over who gets to use the iPad, for 10 minutes, and what kind of impact is that going to have on our culture, on our communication, on the connection between two human beings? Okay,
when you're talking about future, and is there something you kind of expect? Is there something that stands out to you, and you think that certain trend will fade or will go stronger? There are all those stats about particular social media, like Twitter supposedly had lost a lot of volume, like tweets per user, or Facebook is incorporating more and more different functionalities, and Mark Zuckerberg just announced the introduction of live videos. So basically, some people said that he just put a tombstone on Periscope before it's properly developed, and I wonder What would you say from this perspective? Like how all new gadgets, like now it's gadgets, soon
Yeah.
it might be the next best thing, as you mentioned, like wearables or virtual reality. Where would you see this?
I think we're just in a. I think we have to recognize that we're still in this seemingly like constant state of evolution, this movement, and so we get used to a specific thing, and like going back to the kind of almost like our addiction conversation, like some people are addicted to Twitter or Facebook or something, right? And so I think that when that happens, if you were to think about it in that way, the removal or the long tail to that in terms of it's changing its product or its service can have an impact on people. And it can have an impact on business, obviously, as well, too. But I just think that those things are still evolving. I mean, as they continue to integrate into our daily lives and the connection and interaction that we have with just people in general, I think, you know, our way we interact changes as well as the technology changes. So it's just there's so much change just happening that I think, you know, it's inevitable that it'll just change again. In terms of other technologies like a wearables device or virtual reality, I think, you know, again, those things are changing rapidly. There's a lot of really interesting stats and trends that are out there in terms of the future of virtual reality or artificial intelligence or whatever it might be. And so I think those are really strong hypotheses, and they seem like they have a lot of really great value, but those are creating a high degree of expectations for what they're going to do. Man, that's going to solve or inoculate this particular problem. Well, maybe, right? We'll see. Gartner has, I don't know if you're familiar with Gartner, research analyst firm, right? Has this, the hype cycle, they call it. So I like to use that as an example that we're in this kind of stage of really heightened degree of expectations for this new technology, this new way of thinking or application of something. And it's going to take time to see if that is actually true.
What really sticks?
What really
what
sticks?
washes away?
What is the real root value and the biggest promise that this next thing delivers? And I guess that goes back to all this discussion about like, you have to be mindful of all of what's going on because it's just there will be constant change as long as we continue to experiment with technology. You know, things like wearables. What's going to happen in terms of actual behavior change? Just because we can capture and record so much information about how many steps, how many calories, how many anything, doesn't mean it actually changes behavior yet.
Yeah, until someone comes up with an actual application for the data and
I think it's about
behind it.
Yeah, I think it's about experimentation. We're doing some work with the Kigali Genocide Memorial. And one of the things that we did when we worked with genocide survivors and talking about what their current needs are was that they really wanted a place to kind of call their own at the memorial and a place for reflection. And that was really important because the memorial itself is at a really interesting inflection point where they continue to advance their sustainable peace building education program. And you know, almost 100,000 visitors each year come and visit, but there's 250,000 people that are buried there, and so there's lots of survivors who come and visit and pay their respects to their loved ones. And so as you continue to advance on the visitor experience side, you need to also stay true to the core mission and focus. And so when we did this workshop, what we did was came up with a brand new architectural space, a concept. And so, you know, when you work with a nonprofit organization, and then you talk about a conceptual idea for architecture. Architecture is really expensive, or can be, really expensive. So I'm curious about some of these technologies like virtual reality, as an example, of how that can reduce the risk or clarify what the need is by trying some of these things without having to kind of go off and invest so much of an expense. And so in fact, we actually built a Google Cardboard VR associated to the physical architecture space for the sole purpose of wanting to generate more conversation.
Of course. Well, it's such memorial on such a thing. We are used to talk about flashy things and easy subjects and the incremental value and so on, but I'm actually really curious how you translate those tools, because basically we have a certain toolbox for solving challenges.
Mm-hmm.
How do you apply those things that seem so easy and not very serious? A lot of yellow post-its and drawing on the board and working with such a tough subject with so much pain, with difficult emotions. Like how you connect worlds of people who are used to cracking some detail to make something more fun, and how they manage to work with basically traumatic or traumatized community.
Yeah, so when we took a team to start working with the Genocide Memorial in Kigali, we took a team of 10 designers with us, having already had done some work prior to that with Aegis Trust, who's the nonprofit that helps manage the memorial. We took the team and immersed ourselves in it. So a tremendous amount of research, 500 plus hours of research, thinking about and experiencing and talking with visitors, all about the visitor experience. And what we found was that by doing that research and experiencing the memorial from the visitor's perspective, it is such a at the time, such a highly emotional experience that it actually develops empathy, but it develops too much empathy. And so it actually winds up leading to somebody burning out or shutting down and not being able to process anymore. And that's actually a fascinating insight because what they lacked was an understanding to be able to say, the story is producing so much empathy, so much of an emotional response, that it's not actually aligned to what the desired outcome is, which is the memorial and what it stands for, and the story around the '94 genocide against the Tutsi. Is they want people to leave, to continue to share their story, but also enact and embody these strong, positive humanitarian values and qualities around the world, so that the hope is that a genocide won't happen again, there or elsewhere. And so you've got to think about that from an experience. So if we go back to well-designed experiences, that experience was well-designed to produce an overwhelming amount of emotion, but it wasn't well-designed to produce greater humanitarian action.
Okay, I'm asking all those questions because now tension in Europe is rising, and we have memories of where hate can lead us to, and what kind of impact it leaves on whole nations. I was wondering because we have repeating signals that, for example, young people visiting sites that witnessed Holocaust are very much detached from the actual thing, and that the exposition to the sites and explaining the process that actually took place doesn't work anymore. I wonder if what you did in Kigali, if that is an opportunity to rephrase the experience and to cause people to empathize more than just to witness, because what we're looking at right now, I think, in Polish memorials of Nazi violence from the Second World War, looks like people just have their fuse blown by the trauma, and they start acting out of context, without seriousness, without actually thinking of what this means.
Yeah.
I wonder if using your example that you worked on, we can raise the empathy and make people think more than just try to block out the situation they are facing.
Yeah, the work that we did led us to a model called the Inzovu curve. And it's an emotional conversion model. It's kind of like the equivalent or a parallel of that would be like a journey map, right? A customer journey map. And that's important because it looks at moving somebody from this level, thinking of awareness all the way through to action. And what we've found since working with the memorial, the Genocide Memorial, is we've continued to advance our thinking about the Inzovu curve itself. And so we've done some virtual events and actually had a virtual event where we provided designers a toolkit to take out to other memorials and museums around the world and actually map out the experience against the model, because we're curious about continuing to learn about this hypothesis around the model that we have and its potential applicability, not to solve everything, but to be used as a tool to reconsider or rethink or even evaluate or even discuss, open up dialogue and discussion around a visitor experience for institutions like memorials and museums. And I think that's important because as we've continued to advance the thinking, we've gone to places like Museum Next conference and done workshops with museum managers, directors, and curators. And there's such a need to move from this model of kind of tourism for that type of institution to one really of an agent of social change or an institution of change. So I'm really curious about, as that moves forward, what will be our opportunities as designers, as the design community, to be able to help articulate what that experience should be, so that there's greater action coming out of it, and it's not just a point of learning, but it's a point of helping realize or reflect, realize, and start to build up positive behaviors that these institutions really need to stand for, or do stand for.
Okay. Well, coming back to our conference and what we achieved here, how do you feel about the workshop you had with our participants yesterday? You were working on raising volunteers' activity, right? Making connection.
Yeah, we partnered with Amnesty International here to look at how can we generate or kind of rethink activist engagement inside or in support of the refugee crisis. So Amnesty and I worked for the last couple months and kind of really thinking about the challenge and bringing that into the workshop yesterday. So the way I told the attendees was this isn't just learning a design process. Some of them were familiar with the process that we used. It was more of design doing. So some workshops are coming in to learn kind of an additional skill or advanced methodology. This was taking what designers know and understand and using some of those skills and abilities and actually getting them in a setting in which giving them a problem to then embed the Amnesty team inside the 3 design teams that we constructed yesterday, and actually move from a point of kind of research and interviewing and understanding to a degree in the morning through to kind of defining the experience and generating ideas to increase greater engagement by activists. So I think Amnesty was pretty pleased with the ideas and the range of the ideas that the teams focused on, and so now we're trying to determine what's next.
Okay. What are you looking forward to? We're beginning the lectures tomorrow. There's going to be a showcasing of different case studies from around the world. Is there something that you particularly look forward to?
I'm really interested to see the range of talks by all the folks that are speaking over the course of the next 2 days, and the connection back to social good and the responsibility that we have as designers. So I'm really curious to see the different perspectives that, whether that's somebody's working in a nonprofit or NGO kind of space, or somebody's working in for-profit, they're just different perspectives and the stories, the techniques employed, those sorts of things. So I think I'm just excited to just sit back and listen and learn from all these other really talented individuals.
All right, thank you very much. And
Dziękuję.
I'm looking forward to Dziękuję bardzo. And I'm looking forward to hearing your speeches as well, among others. So
Thank you.
stay tuned and thank you very much.